Santosh. We can start whenever you are ready.
Okay. Um, Hello, everyone, uh, and welcome to the today's session on way to healthy heart. So, uh, I would like to request uh, CEO of IITB, IIT Bombay Alumni Association, Mr. Devesh Katu, to talk a few words about the association and the work that we are doing.
Thank you, Santosh. Hi everybody. Thank you for taking time off from your weekend to attend this session. About IITBA, but before that, actually, I just wanted to also mention that I'm myself an alumnus from the class of 1990, BTech CSE H9. And now I work as the CEO of the Alumni Association. So the Alumni Association is basically Section 8 NGO that was founded in 2001 to the alumni to each other and to the institute. And so we do this through a bunch of programs and services. We have a few alumni-driven initiatives. Some of these include a financial aid program for underprivileged students, a hostel alumni team stewardship program, which improves amenities in hostels, a retired faculty wellness fund, which provides health insurance to retired faculty who did not have it before, and just to name a couple of them. Besides that, we also organize the annual reunions, including the Silver Jubilee reunion and other milestone reunions for batches. And we just had these in December, actually, in a virtual format this year. And through our network of chapters around the world, we organize events in your local geographies. Of course, due to the pandemic, all these events are online right now, but otherwise, you would have these events in your physical area, so in Bangalore in this case. And we have 13 chapters in India and 7 in the rest of the world, besides 12 in North America, which are managed by sister organization, the Heritage Foundation. And then we also organize some special interest group events, such as FinTech event that we're having on March 20th online. Expect to hear more about it pretty soon. And then we have some publications such as an alumni magazine called Fundamatics, www.fundamatics.net, which you can peruse. Coming to today's event, thank you for inviting me to attend. This topic is actually quite personal to me. When I was 13, my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. So he actually was overweight, and he used to also smoke and drink. Things that I guess we shouldn't be doing. So at that time, I sort of resolved to lead a healthier lifestyle. I mean, I do have my vices, but generally I try to lead a healthier lifestyle. So one of the things, of course, I did was not to smoke ever, which I still have maintained. But the other thing also was to eat healthy and exercise. And so I took up running several years ago, and I run marathons and other races. I think everybody needs to have some form of exercise as well as manage your dietary habits. And I'm sure that you'll be talking more about that in the seminar. But it's just something that I personally did because I didn't want to follow the example of my father. So that's a little bit about why I'm here. Over to Dr. Sadashiv.
Yeah, thank you, Devesh, for the good information. And so in today's, I would like to introduce today's speaker and my close friend, Dr. Sadashiv Baburao Tamkond. And Sadashiv did his MBBS from Vijaypur in 2004, and he did his MS from Government College from Mysore in 2008, and he did his MCH from Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi in 2012. And since then, he has been working in different organizations like Forties, and he has also started rural college. Hospitals, so that people can have low cost heart surgeries. So from past 8 years, he has been working in cardiac surgery at the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and previously has worked as a consultant at Max Super Specialty Hospital, Pratapganj and New Delhi. Then he was a consultant at the Fortis Hospital in Bangalore, and currently he's a chief consultant at Medicover Hospital, Karimnagar in Telangana. He's the author of many articles in national and international journals, and has been a speaker at various events. Most recent being the invited speaker at the World Heart World Heart and Cardiothoracic Surgery Conference 2009 held at Singapore. So it gives me an immense pleasure in inviting Dr. Sadashiv Tamgond for a talk on Way to a Healthy Heart, organized for IITians, the general community. Before we begin, I request participants to be in a mute mode. I think most of them are all by default, it is in a mute mode. And all the questions that you have raised while registration has been already communicated to Dr. Sadashiv. And if you have any other questions, you can always type in the text box so that we can pass it on to a doctor so that he can address your questions. And uh, I request Dr. Sadashiv to enlighten us about the way to a healthy heart. Sadashiv, over to you.
Yeah, very good evening to everyone. And first and foremost, I must thank all of you for inviting me on this platform, and has given me an opportunity to talk on heart. Okay, so without wasting much of time, we will start our presentation. And during the presentation, I will give you how we are going to move on with the things, and how I'm going to disperse my information to you people. So let us start the presentation as of now. Yes. Now, way to a healthy heart. What does it actually mean? It is the words mean it like it is a healthy heart. What everyone should have. A healthy heart means a healthy life. Without a heart, you can't survive, isn't it? So it has to beat all the time, all the while. So my presentation will be not very specific to an individual healthcare as such. I will be talking more of the other things as well, which will give you a proper insight about the healthy heart as a whole for a community, and as well as for your family, as well as for the whole nation as such. And also I'll be focusing on other aspects. So let us, how I have divided the thing is, so the magnitude of heart disease in India. Why I have got take over this topic is because we should understand why do we need to be so careful about our heart diseases. Why not other things? Just I want to know my general health condition. I just want to be very healthy. Why only heart? Why I should be so bothered about heart? Let us understand why we care so much. Not because it is an organ which has a high risk, which is of utmost importance in our body. Not because of that, but we are at high risk because we are of Asians, and also we'll understand how is our healthcare system, especially in India and where we stay. How much support we are getting from our system. Then after that, I'll be talking, definitely we'll put some insights on the individual healthcare as well. Now, after that, we'll talk about the technology development, which is being done as of now, what technology we are absolutely using as of now in today's present day, and what could be the future innovations. I'll be using certain terminology. Please, you can always interrupt me. And ask for the clarification if I am missing on that. I will keep my language as simple as possible. Okay, so let us look at the heart diseases in India. Why the heart diseases are the leading cause of death. If you see, even if you compare other diseases, it is the leading cause. It accounts to 28.1% of the total deaths. So total deaths, and 14.1% of total disability adjusted life years in India as of in 2016. This study was done from 1990 to 2016, where they have come up with these figures. And also, if you compare with the 1990, it was only 15.2%. It accounted for only 15.2% of deaths and 6.9% of disability adjusted life years. See, the disability adjusted life years is when a person who is sick because of a heart disease or some other diseases, more often with a heart disease, and he becomes a non-productive to the society. So that is very important, because in India it is very common that a male in any family will be earning member for the whole family. So suppose one that earning member becomes deceased and crippled and is not able to earn the livelihood, the whole family will suffer. So that is why this is also very, very important. Now let us look at the demographic distribution of the cardiovascular diseases. Now if you see Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and as well as Punjab in the north, has more than 5,000 cases per lakh population. So they are that high burden. If you see the moderate burden is in Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, as well as in West Bengal. Next to that is in Karnataka, Telangana, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat, where it accounts for 4,000 to 4,499 cases per lakh population. So ischemic heart disease. Ischemic heart disease is a disease when there is a decreased blood supply to the heart. We otherwise call it as a coronary artery disease, or we also call it as a commonly which the patient comes is with a heart attack. There's a blockage in the vessels. This is the most common disease, ischemic heart disease, among all cardiovascular diseases. And the highest load, as you can see, is in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, as well as in Punjab, which accounts to 2,250 cases for every lakh population. And next to that is West Bengal and Himachal Pradesh, to follow it with Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana. It has, the ischemic heart disease has increased by 2.5 times over 26 years. It has increased by 2.5 times. Stroke is again comes under the cardiovascular disease. It is not a cardiac but a vascular component of it. So here again the distribution is more in the Kerala, Goa, and West Bengal. In these parts the stroke incidence is much higher, which accounts to more than 625 cases per lakh population. Rheumatic heart disease. Rheumatic heart disease was very highly prevalent, and it was the disease of the developing countries, or the countries which are underdeveloped. Still, there are countries where in underdeveloped countries, the rheumatic heart disease accounts for the highest number of cases. But now it has decreased over time. But still, we see the highest number of cases in Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Assam, and these Punjab parts, which accounts to more than 625 cases per lakh. 20 years back, rheumatic heart disease was much more than ischemic heart disease. With our advanced sciences and the technology that we have now, the prevalence and the incidence of this disease has come down. So this is the chart wherein we see that cardiovascular diseases accounting for 28% of the deaths, total deaths, with 14% of the disability adjusted life years. So among men, it is 29%, women 26%. If you compare this with the road injuries, road accident injuries, it accounts for 17.2% of the deaths. This is the lesser than the cardiovascular diseases. So it is much more common cause of death in India. Now coming to the comorbidities or the risk factors which people carry. Now we are taking the account of people who are less than 30 years, sorry, more than 30 years. And initially we used to take account of more than 45 to 50 years. Now we are screening people who are 30 and above. So such people with high blood pressure are seen more common in Kerala, Goa, Punjab, Sikkim, as well as in Nagaland, to accounting for more than 26 persons for every 100 people. We see that they have hypertension. And to follow up with, we see that there are people in Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Jharkhand who are also having high blood pressure. And other than high blood pressure, what we screen is for high cholesterol in age group of 30 years and above. We see that people in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh account for 29, more than 29 per 100. So people staying in these areas are does have high propensity for cardiovascular diseases because of high cholesterol. As you can see, even Andhra Pradesh and Manipur, Nagaland, here also people are having high cholesterol. So this is the distribution of the heart diseases, and you should understand why we are so keen on screening the people for heart diseases, and we encourage them to take care of their heart. It is not to create a fear among the population, just because the distribution of the diseases is much high and the risk factors is much high. As of now, the corona, however it has been, the pandemic has been very bad, still the mortality has remained less than 2 to 4%, while the cardiovascular mortality is still around 30%. So we should be very careful about that. Now, coming to the healthcare system, how does our healthcare system work in India? It is in two parts, either it is government or private. In government, there are research institutes like All India Institute of Medical Science, SGPGL Lucknow, like JIPMER in South India, it is a JIPMER in Puducherry. These are all research institutes where the government is funding and cases are being done. Now, there are state-sponsored hospitals like Jayadeva, which is state-sponsored hospital, Jayadeva in Bangalore. Now, there are certain other hospitals every state has. Now, trust-aided schemes. The trust-aided schemes are the schemes like Yashaswini, Arogyasri schemes, wherein these schemes are aided by the governments and also by the World Bank and also sometimes by the UN, United Nations funding will be there. Then we have central government health schemes, employee schemes, then PSU beneficiary. PSUs are those like Indian Oil Company or BEL, BHEL, HAL. Such companies will have their own fundings and they will provide healthcare benefits to their employees. Then coming to the private sector, we have corporate hospitals. Corporate hospitals are, you know, very much like Fortis, Apollo, Max, Medicover. All these hospitals are corporate hospitals. They have their own way of doing and putting their services to the people. Then we have private individual hospitals like doctors or non-medicos or some business people. They start their hospitals on their own and they fund from their own pockets. Then government schemes. In private we have government schemes running in certain hospitals where they sanction authority to run the government schemes and they will fund for the certain group of patients. Then we have insurances, the health insurance. As you people are very much aware that your company or you will have an individual healthcare insurance through which your finances will be taken care. Then we have health tourism. Health tourism is very beneficial for those who are NRIs. Those people who come from abroad can also take the benefits of the healthcare system through health tourism programs. We also have CSRs. There is a company social responsibility funding through which will also be funded in the private hospitals, wherein we give services to various population. So in this, what are the challenges that we face while giving the healthcare system? It could be either social, political, economic, or environmental, or even demographic challenges. So considering all these challenges, we penetrate into to provide the services to every individual in this country. So what are the basic influencing factors? It could be three factors. One is health system factor, second is medical factor, third is environmental factor. In health system factor, there are again three. One is affordability, access, and awareness. So when we address an affordability, it could be through insurance, government funds, or charity. For access, we need a good infrastructure. We need good manpower, skilled manpower, that is staffing, equipment, and supplies. Awareness, it is the patient education, physician training, and program publicity. All these are important. Next, coming to the medical factors, it comes under care delivery. Either it has to be through communication, teamwork, and competence. All three are the tripods of care delivery. As far as environmental factors is concerned, it is the support from the government, where it depends on our regulatory environment and also social structure and culture. There are various taboos and various thoughts in their mind which we have to modify when these are the major challenges. When all put together, our outcomes will be to increase, aim will be to increase the volumes, decrease the mortality, that is decrease the death rate, decrease the morbidity, that is to decrease the suffering and improved quality. If we overlook onto the tier system of our Indian cities, there are 8 tier 1 cities, 26 tier 2 cities, 33 tier 3 cities, 5,000 tier 4 cities, and more than 6,38,000 villages. And if you see our population distribution, it is much more in the rural areas. While what we see is 90% of the open heart programs or the cardiac programs are in tier 1 cities and tier 2 cities, with only with about 75% in tier 1 itself. 68% of the population live in rural areas who are deprived of any kind of health services. So our approach when we start any program, what we have done is we always go with the 5 things. We have a vision, skill, incentive, resources, and action plan. Then we bring a good change. Suppose we lack the vision, that will lead into confusion. We don't have skills, that will lead to anxiety. Without incentives, the change will be very slow. And suppose we don't have resources, that will only now. And also we have understood how it truly matters to us, and how to bring a change and all that into a healthcare system to bring a healthy life to each and every person who live with us in our country. I'm coming to the individual healthcare. See, individual healthcare doesn't mean that I should be healthy. If I say I throw all the dust on the road, or I don't behave in a civilized manner, and I smoke anywhere, I create a bad reputation in the community. That doesn't mean that you'll live a healthy life. Your healthy life should impress on others. So you should build it within your family. Your healthy lifestyle is not you going on a walk, or you going on a jogging, and you going to a gym, or you having a proper diet. It doesn't matter to me what my neighbor does. It doesn't matter what my friend does. It truly doesn't make any sense. What it makes sense is when you encourage or promote your healthy lifestyle to others. So for that, first I have to cultivate the best lifestyle. So I should become an ideal. Then that becomes ideal to my family. That becomes ideal to my community, and that becomes ideal to the whole country. That is how the change is brought in. That is how you can be healthy. If your environment is not good, then there is no point you being healthy and you tell I have done everything while still I have lung problems, I am asthmatic. What is the point and all that? So the best thing is you have to bring in change to your community as well. So what are the individual things that you are looking upon? I am not going into the depth of the parameters. The reason being, every parameter is individualized. Say, for example, if you talk about blood pressure itself, or you talk about heart rate, or you talk about cholesterol levels, hemoglobin levels, whatever, whether it's a laboratory parameter or it is a physical parameter, every parameter is totally individualized. So whenever then you get regarding every parameter in the Google, if you put to Google, you find that you should have a good habit, you should have a good diet, your family history is important, you shouldn't have high cholesterol, you shouldn't have high blood pressure, maintain your stress levels at low, this thing, change your personality, change your lifestyle. These are the common words that you always get. But what is the right thing? What should be done to decrease your stress is totally individualized. I cannot tell you that sitting in North India, you should have your room temperature of 25 degrees all the time. Then you bring in some equipment and you create an unnatural environment in Delhi in the winter season just to make sure that your room temperature is 25 doesn't make any sense. So that is how it is. Now the environmental factors are pollution, the food quality, the social security, socio-economic status, misinformation, medical malpractice. All these things are equally important, which we always overlook. We definitely overlook. We keep on adding information, we keep on changing our lifestyle. That is not absolutely not good. Any lifestyle, if your friend is having a very good lifestyle and you are impressed by that, doesn't mean that will be good lifestyle for you. It is never like that. So don't go with all that. So instead of going into the depth, let us understand the most common queries which I usually come across with my patients, with the people whom I come into contact. So I'll go with some of the queries, and I will take the queries later after the presentation, which if something is not covered in this. So first question is that what are chances that I may or may not get heart disease? Now this question is more often asked by every person, like even a some person would come say, sir, one of my friend has been very good at everything, but still he was diagnosed with a heart disease. So what are the chances that I get a heart disease? See, the chances that you get a heart disease depends on the various parameters. That is on your basically on the family history, basically on your lifestyle, basically on your diet, this thing, everything. Even if everything is right, say you are all perfect, just because you are an Asian, just because you are an Indian, still you carry a chances of 4 to 5%. That is for sure, 4 to 5%. So you need not worry about that. You are not an immortal. You are a mortal. So don't stress yourself. Oh, I may have heart disease. What am I supposed to do? Just don't think over it. You don't have to think over it. Okay. The chances are 4 to 5%. Leave it at that. This thing, and keep on doing the best. What best you can do with your lifestyle. Second question, which is more often asked, is which oil is good? Now, Saurav Ganguly, unfortunately, he was promoting rice bran oil, and he has a very good lifestyle for all reasons, but he landed up with cardiac issues, and he landed with angioplasty. So suddenly everyone was asking, oh, so when Saurav Ganguly has a heart disease, now how are we left out? Now, what I'm going to say is, any oil, whether it is rice bran, whatever oil it is, palm oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, oil is oil. Oil is like a poison. So as much as possible, avoid oil. When you want oil, eat it to a level where it is, where you can satisfy yourself. That is all. You don't have to eat the completely oily food and all that. So there is a balanced diet which has to be maintained. In that, oil is an ingredient which has to be added at certain proportion. Beyond that, you should not consume oil. And there is no oil which is very good, very perfect, that you can consume more than normal. Third question is, how often should I get tested? This is something which is it is very tricky for me. As a person who came to me and asked, sir, again a similar question. One of my relative has been tested heart disease. He went for some routine investigations because the insurance guy asked, and they did TMT. It came out to be positive. Now they asked for angiography, and now I'm very much concerned. You tell me how often I can get angiography done or TMT done and all that. So see, the point is, TMT or any other investigation, it has to be done only when required, and your body itself will tell it. Your body itself will give away the signs or symptoms when you should get it done, and you approach the doctor. Now, because these schemes and certain things have come into the market, and they insist upon doing it, and that is not for your individual health status, that is only to protect their money from their own insurance houses. Because if suppose you got diagnosed with some disease, they will not say that, okay, now I'm going to give you benefit. They will say, okay, now you have this disease, either you pay more premium or you don't take this insurance. That is how it is. So they do it for their own benefits, and the parameters they set is absolutely not standard. Trust me, the parameters are not standard. Next is vegetarian or non-vegetarian food. How often can I non-vegetarian? I can't avoid non-vegetarian. Now, a lot of some different ethnic people like Muslims and all, they consume non-veg on a regular basis. Now, see, the veg or non-veg, it is a regular diet for a person. If I'm a non-vegetarian by my culture, I will consume vegetarian only. For me, non-vegetarian is of no importance, and I wouldn't consume it. And for a person who is consuming non-vegetarian, his body is used to non-vegetarian. So there is something called balanced diet. There is nothing like vegetarian, non-vegetarian. There is a balanced diet which has to be followed. Even when you consume non-vegetarian, there are certain norms which we have to follow, and according to person, according to their lifestyle, it will be advised. So accordingly, it is them. Can I smoke occasionally or consume tobacco? Now, a person who has been smoking all the years and he has nothing, no heart disease. A person who is not smoking has a heart disease. The patients complain, sir, we haven't done anything. Why we have? See, smoking is not something which is mandatory. It is not something which you have to do in your life. Or consuming tobacco is not something which you have to do it, then only you have satisfied. It is not something which has to be in your bucket list. So what I feel is, smoking has to be avoided at all costs. whether young, old, or whoever it is. And smoking is harmful. It is directly harmful to your heart and directly harmful to your lungs. So either consuming occasionally or even for just to taste it or do it, it has to be prohibited. Can I consume alcohol? Yes. Alcohol is something which is very social requirement nowadays. Now you go to any party, whether it is a doctor's party also, alcohol is a must. Without alcohol, there is no party at all. That is for sure. Now, even among doctors, the alcohol consumption is on the social grade. Some people consume more also. It is not that doctors don't die of alcohol-related diseases and all. They also die. Everyone is a human being after all. So consume alcohol in a social this thing. Alcohol doesn't bear any direct effects on the heart. Trust me, alcohol doesn't bear any direct effects on the heart, but it truly does effect on the liver and your GI system, gastrointestinal system. So alcohol should be done taken in a social manner, but only in a limited use. But avoid taking adjuvants of alcohol. The adjuvants in India are like the chikna, that oily things, the bhajias and all that. So they are very much more harmful than alcohol itself. Now coming to seventh question. So what kind of exercise is good? I have a very busy schedule. Can you give me any options? This is a very question, common question which I come across. And trust me, even me being a doctor, I'm not able to commit or schedule myself to do some exercise. But the best exercise I believe is do your own domestic work. You are thirsty, you want someone to fetch water for you, don't do that. You just go to the kitchen, fetch your own water. You clean your own utensils. Probably the lockdown has taught you a lot, and most of I'm not sure. I don't have any statistics, but I've seen that most of our colleagues have lost their weight instead of gaining the weight in lockdown, and that is because they have been doing a lot of household work. So instead of keeping a maid, you do your work. Okay, I don't want to decrease the housemaid this thing and all. They should also get their remuneration and their livelihood, but at least try to do your own job. That is the best exercise you can do. And next thing is, whenever get a chance to walk, you want to walk to a mall, you want to walk around 1 kilometer to a store, or fetch some groceries or something, try to walk around. Don't take your vehicle or this thing and all. So you have to take a chance, and if someone gives you some physical work, you should be happy enough to do that work. You should be happy enough to do that work. That is how you can burn your more calories instead of doing exercise alone. And when you're in office, okay, you have bench work, you have to sit along for a long period of time, you can always take 2 or 3 minutes break in between. Stand up, just see, look around, give a rest to your eyes, and you can always go have some drink some water, keep yourself hydrated and all that. So that is how you can carry on with your exercises. Now coming to the eighth question, my parent underwent cardiac surgery. What is the risk for me? Yes, this is the another question which we often face. And see, the family history, yes, you are at the double risk. Means for general population, if I put it as 4% risk, I would put it as 8% risk, but definitely not 100%. You should not fear that, okay, my father, mother, or my uncle, chacha, someone has got a heart disease. Now there is a 100% risk that I will also have heart disease. No, definitely no. You are at risk, but definitely you are not like not 100% you will have it. So you shouldn't be very much bothered about that. Only thing is you change your lifestyle, you bring it to a way wherein you can prevent it. And at times you will feel that I should get tested more often. No need for that. Again, there are certain tests which you can get it done. Like for example, you can get an ECG done. For example, ECG done, that is more than enough. That too, if you have any concern with that. Otherwise, there is no need for ECG also. I have incidentally found to have high blood sugars. Can I avoid medicines? Want to control the diet? Now, the same thing which happens with either blood pressure or sugars. Again, some doctor has seen you for some other reason. Say you have respiratory tract infection, you have common flu. You went to a doctor, and he sees that your family has some history, and he sees your sugars or your blood pressure. You see that it is very high. Now you are very young, 30, 35 years, less than 40. You see a lot of literatures, even less than 30 years. You see, you shouldn't be having so much. So you want to control with the diet. No, when you have some parameter which is indicating that you have high sugars or high blood pressure, kindly take a proper health care advice, and you should always opt for medicines, because from 25 to 50 years is the period where when you control your sugars or blood pressure, your cardiac risk will be drastically down after 50 years. So you can live a healthy heart life after 50 years, because your disease, as your age progresses, your disease also, the progression rate decreases. In fact, say those people who come with a disease after 50 years, they would have started to develop disease only after 40-45, and those who have developed come with the disease in less than 50 years, they would have developed disease in just than 3 years. So the rate of progression is much higher in younger population. So that is the time when you should take an aggressive step to take proper medications and control your blood sugars and blood pressure. Now coming to the 10th question of a similar kind, I have a family history of high BP, what is the risk? Yes, high blood pressure with a family risk has a much higher risk. It is almost 2 or 3 times. So you should always take medications and control your blood pressure, and also on the diet and as well as exercise. Coming to the medications, I will tell you one important fact is that medication is never a solution. You think that I'm taking medication and I'll go with my whatever lifestyle it is, or I'll go with whatever diet it is, I'll take more medicines, doesn't give a solution. Not at all. Medicine is just a support. If you are not changing your lifestyle and your diet and the any causal factors, then the medicine is of no use. No medicines will act upon you. That is for sure. I don't smoke, neither drink. I'll have a good lifestyle. Still, I'm diagnosed with a heart disease. Why? See, this is a very tricky question. And most often when the patient is so, they don't accept it. The moment we say, oh, you have a heart disease, how is it, sir? This is not possible, because now the doctors have become very commercial. They want to make money. You give up some disease, you ask for some tests, and then you make some money. No, it's not like that. Definitely no. You have come with some signs or symptoms. Now you have landed up in the hospital on your own. No one has invited you to the hospital. Now, when you landed, we have run through some tests wherein we find that you definitely have a heart disease, and you have to undergo the related treatment. How it has happened so many times, most of the times we will not be able to justify the things, and we will go with the literatures only and with the past experience. Coming to the best component in my diet, it's always this is the thing which one patient will ask, sir, you tell me one thing which I want to eat for my lifetime. I should be healthy, whatever it matters. Now they stick to something like kiwi. I never seen kiwi during my childhood. I am seeing it now. Now I see dragon fruit. I never seen in my childhood. Now I see so many other fruits and so many things coming into the market, and it is all just marketing and this thing. See, what you have to stick to your diet is what grows in your yard. Stick to your diet, what grows in your yard, and stick to a diet which is commonly available. Stick to a balanced diet. That is best thing. What you have to follow. There is nothing called best component in the diet. Restricted my salt intake. Still, BP is not under control. Already on multiple types of medicine. Yes, I have probably answered this question already, because whatever medicines you take, they are only the supportive measures. They are not your complete solution. So the medicine should not totally depend on the medicines. That doesn't mean that you should not restrict your salt intake and all that. So diet and your lifestyle is very important. Diagnosed with the ischemic heart disease, I have been advised to undergo cardiac surgery. What are the survival chances? This is the most fear. The fear is to undergo surgery. Now, since childhood, we fear the injections. We fear so much. Now we are fearing the COVID vaccine, because so many people are telling, okay, we have this thing, some people have died and so many things. But that doesn't mean that it is so common. See, out of almost, I believe, around 6 lakhs people who are vaccinated, very few people have gone with the side effects. That doesn't mean that the injection itself is at fault. So cardiac surgery as such, the success rate in today's date is 99.6%. 99.6. The failure rate is 0.4%. The 0.4%, and it is very commonly done, and the success rate is much higher. And without disease, the failure, like the patients going into failure, and the death rate is much. See, the death rate is 28%. 4.4% is much comparable with 20%. So once diagnosed with hypertension, heart disease, I have underwent surgery. how long am I supposed to take medications? Now patients think that, okay, now everything is fine. I have undergone a surgery. Now I have undergone a plasty, angioplasty. Okay, now I'm good. It doesn't mean you're good. See, whatever has been done was to curtail that problem for that time. That's it. So beyond that, nothing is going to change. Your life is not going to change. Your body is not going to change. So what you have to change is your lifestyle, your diet, your medications, everything. So they are all modifiable factors. Anything which is modifiable has to be changed. So you have to take your medications lifelong, not for that moment. So what is the best test to know about my heart? So someone, if he thinks that, okay, this test, if I get it done every 6 months or every 3 months, okay, I want to be very careful. Every month I want to get a test done, and I want to keep my heart healthy. No, nothing. A person who has undergone a test today can land up in problem tomorrow. So there is nothing called a best test. The best test to heart is when you need it. A deserving heart needs a deserving test. That is how I want to put it. At what age will I have a higher risk of having a heart disease? Again, the age, the age has come down. Now we are looking into 30 years, less than 30 years, or even we have seen the youngest patient which we have operated in COVID times is 29 years. So there is no age criteria as such as of now. It is all your life, how it takes. Cannot afford to have enough sleep, any options. Now, some people work in the nights, they have their clients calling up in the nights. And even we as doctors, we sometimes we are deprived of our sleep. And how to manage this actually, it is very tricky. How we manage actually, how we manage. Yes, there are at times when we feel at stress, there's a huge workload, then you can't sleep. What best option you can have is have a good naps, because there are two types of sleep basically. There is REM and non-REM. So REM sleep, which is which can happen anytime. NREM is the sleep where you need a proper stress-free. So NREM is you can take a proper naps for that. You have to schedule your timings, and it doesn't matter when I was a resident, we hardly used to get to sleep. Like we used to get in total of 4 hours in 72 hours. We used to get only 4 hours sleep in 72 hours. Believe it. So that 4 hours used to be like 1 hour nap wherever, and it was so stressful. I even developed dark circles. Now it has come down as such, but I even developed dark circles. But it was unavoidable. Anyways, still could have been avoided. So I prefer you should stick to your work. Work, everything is important. Work is not beyond your health. See, you can work when you're healthy. It is not like you are healthy, so you work, nothing like that. So you have to be healthy to work. Any medications for stress? No, there are no medications. Standard medications are not at all there. When you land up in stress, more and more stress, you land up with a psychiatrist. So if you are in that pathological stress, pathological in the sense where you definitely need someone's interference, don't hesitate. Even before, when you feel that your stress is beyond your control, when you are not able to control, you are feeling that, no, I'm feeling sick, I don't want to work, my boss is torturing me. Even if the mildest things are there, try to take assistance from a medical person, because that is the time when if you intervene, you will be saved. When it becomes malignant, when it's malignant means then you can't come back. So that pathological stress, when it becomes malignant, then it will become too late for you to manage the stress. So there have been recent communications regarding the stress and stress management. You can go through them, but always take assistance. Does vitamin supplements help cure cardiac disease? Some people keep on taking some supplements, say vitamins. Some take some like cod liver oil. Some take some steves, some herbals. So whatever you take, still they don't curb heart diseases. It may help your healthy lifestyle. Means they may modify your body diet. The little modification will be there, but definitely they will not. One thing is not right for your heart diseases. So once we have gone through these queries, I will again take the queries once I finish. So let us come to the technology, because see, we being into the healthcare system, we are doctors. We learn from beginning to end till now. We keep on learning about the body, their mechanisms, the organ system, physiology, pathology, whatever it is, the medicines and all. but we never understand how actually the equipments are working, or how they are devised. We don't get any knowledge on that, and we don't even get knowledge in the marketing. We don't get knowledge in the financial systems. So we learn these things over time once we come into the field. So that is the reason why I want to put a few words on the technology, because you people have the background of technology. So let us understand how it influences our branch, and it influences 95% as of today. It was inverse in the past, because we used to rely on clinical sense. We used to see the patient's eyes. We would say, okay, your hemoglobin is less. Now it is not like that. We send the patient to the lab. They have to get a lab parameter done. Then they quantify that parameter. Once it is quantified, then we say, oh, you have anemia. So it takes more than a day or two to understand that patient has anemia and he has to be treated with so and so medicine. But the technology has come today. Technology was not there in the past. So in the past, it was the necessity which has led to the invention. Here you can see this clinician who is trying to listen to the breath sounds of this patient. Just imagine, this patient would have been a female. It would have been very difficult and an embarrassing situation for this guy. So this led this person to find a hollow tubular structure here to listen to the breath sounds or the heart sounds. And this structure itself has been reinvented and developed by René Laennec to this thing, which you are commonly known as stethoscope. He invented the stethoscope. It has become much more, modified, and the sound technology, everything has been improvised by engineers for the medical. This is an example of how technology has started to influence. So now coming to this picture, how this technology is taken forward. This is a echocardiogram. Echocardiogram is again a sound technology. As you can see, this is a heart. It is based on the sounds, the ultrasound, the sound which is gone and it comes back, and the images are created. Here you can see this is the heart image which has been created. There is a tumor in the heart, within the heart, one of our patients, wherein we found out that he had a tumor. And we could understand, because the sound technology, just by hearing the sound, we wouldn't have identified such tumor in the heart. This is because the sound technology has problem. Then we have put in Doppler within this thing. Then these are colors. Can you see the colors? There's a colors. There's color Doppler. So all this is technology. This is not reality. This is just a thing which has been developed by engineers. So they have developed the color Doppler, the two-dimensional parameters. They set in the formulas. Trust me, even today I don't know how to set the applications here. So this is done by software engineers who put in applications, formulas, everything which comes to these numbers. So these numbers, this is another value, TAPSE. TAPSE is one value wherein we understand the function of the right heart. So all these values are brought in by formulas which are preloaded into the machine by engineers. So we give, this is all physics based on physics. So this is how the technology works. Now coming to the operating room, that is the in the clinical room. Now operating room, I would like to discuss on bypass surgery, how the technology works in our heart surgery. So this you can see is the angioplasty. This is the bypass surgery. Angioplasty, when there is a blockage, here is the vessel on the heart. There is a blockage, and this blockage is opened like this by passing a tube. This is the clot or the plaque in the heart. So you do a balloon and an angioplasty. A stent is fit. This is made up of nitinol, and it is a self-expandable. It opens on its own and maintains to the contour of the vessel. So all this has been technologized. This is something which is a science which is not in the medical science. This is science pertaining to technology, engineering. Now this engineering is our medical engineering. This artery, these are conduits. We call them as a conduits. This is a bypass surgery, open heart surgery, wherein these conduits are taken from the patient's own body and connected to the heart vessels, so that heart receives a good amount of blood supply. So I will take you to live operating room. This is a recently done heart surgery. Now here I am open the chest and handling the heart. You can see the heart beating here. I am trying to handle the heart and assess the vessels on the heart. So this patient has come from for ischemic heart disease. Now we want to do bypass surgery on this heart. Now, see, now what is the engineering here? When the heart is beating, this is the monitor. This is the green line is ECG, electrocardiogram. This red line is the blood pressure, continuously monitoring blood pressure. This is the central venous pressure. This is the saturation with the pulse oximeter. The below yellow line is the respiratory rate. This is a ACT machine to see whether blood is thin or thick. We should make the blood thin. This is a cautery machine which seals the bleeding blood vessels. It will seal it. These are the syringe pumps which deliver the drugs here placed in the syringes to the patient at the rate we fix it and we want it to be. This is a ventilator. There was a time when people used to bag it. Now this will automatically give breathing patterns and according to the requirement of the patient. This is a headlight machine which will focus and give me a proper image on my loops. Loop is my microscope on my eyes. Probably I missed on that. So these are the micro instruments. These are the major macro instruments. And these are all devised by engineers because they have to be designed to that perfecture that it has to be used on the heart with comfort and with precision. That is what is important. Here is an octopus. These are again micro instruments. These are the intracoronary shunts because we do beating heart surgery. While heart is beating, it should continuously receive blood. We cannot stop it from receiving the blood. These are the aortic punches. They are all devised. They may look simple, but they have been devised with a lot of research into that. Okay, these are my loops. Can you see this? These are my loops. This is my staff. And this is my assistant who is taking a conduit from the leg. I am taking a conduit from the chest wall. In the meanwhile, he is taking conduit from the leg to connect onto the heart. And during this procedure, we also keep these machines on standby. This is a temperature controlling machine. It's called a hemotherm. Whenever we go on pump, like we want to keep the patient cool or warm, we use that. This is a heart-lung machine. We have kept it on standby and we are testing it all the time when we are doing surgery. Suppose something goes wrong, we immediately put the patient on this pump so that the circulation of the patient is maintained. So this is a pendant. So these are all the technologies which is very important, and most of the work is dependable on them. Without this, we cannot operate. We cannot give good results to the patient. When technology works, then only the results are better. Now, in this, we have already started our surgery. As you can see, the heart is beating here. This part, the gray thing is an octopus. While heart is beating, this part of heart where I'm cutting and opening up a vessel to join has to be immobile so that I can do my work with precision. And this guy who is holding a tube here is blowing this called mist. It blows a mist so that the blood is deviated from my field. Okay, so that is how it is done. And during this time, our assistant and anesthetist will be looking at this monitor. Look at this. The heart is beating at 73 with pressure of 109/63 with saturation of 100 with a respiratory rate of 31. So even in this time, there are centers who are doing awake CABGs, means they don't give anesthesia also. These are the drugs which are continuously being given to the patient. This is the respiratory pattern which is being maintained there with that machine. So this is how it is being done. So it is a very fine work, and we need a lot of precision. A small mistake can land up with the patient's life, nothing more or less with the patient's life. As you can see, the heart is beating. Now, most of you will have a question, what happens to this blood? This blood can be taken up by the suction apparatus, and there is something called as cell savers, wherein we give this blood back to the patient by filtering the components. So that can be done. So now I think you know what is the importance of the technology in our medical science and present healthcare and all. Let us understand what is the prospects in the future technology, in what all areas we are lacking. Trust me, we have progressed only 5%. We are yet to progress 95%. There is a lot of things which has to be addressed, starting from communication. The communication is so much lacking that most of us don't know what is bypass surgery, what is CABG, what is CABG. They don't know what is open heart surgery, what is they feel that heart disease is one single disease. There are at least 150, more than 200 heart diseases. There are various types of heart diseases, and maybe some literate, some knowledge person would have known Suppose someone in their family would have had a heart disease, they will know only 10% of what heart disease is there. Beyond that, they don't know. So communications is very, very important for us. Then coming to database and information management, again, we lack the database. We are doing many times more, like 10-15 times more the surgeries than anywhere across the world. But we lack database. We are not able to make the world understand what we are doing and what is the quality of things what we are doing. And also information management, again, this is a very lacking system. Biomedical engineering, I'll put there are various areas of biomedical engineering I will talk to you. Robotics, AI, Internet of Things, and machine learning, which is already penetrated our healthcare, but we as doctors, we are not able to handle those things because we lack information, and it is fault on our part that we are not able to give enough time to understand all these things, but it has to come. So regarding database information, JP Nadda had given a statement that all India electronic database system for healthcare by 2020 has to be done. So we already have database for reproductive child healthcare, non-communication, tuberculosis, which are overlooked and not being taken seriously. But we have to definitely get into it. Then only we'll understand how to progress. But for that, we need software engineers who have to develop user-friendly accessibility and easily understandable things into this data system. Now coming to biomedical engineering, so whether it is surgical instruments or medical devices, say now devices have come which can control the heart rate. There are artificial devices which even if your heart has failed, you can put a LVAD, that is ventricular assist device, wherein heart you have artificial heart. You can maintain that heart. In India, they have tried to develop and they have developed also, but still it has not become so popular. So we have to develop user-friendly devices, and also we have to promote and make people understand that we have such thing. Tissue engineering is another thing which is already has developed. We have got bio patches which we use in the heart. We are using bioengineered valves. We are using a lot of things like in the tissue engineering. Say suppose you have lost a ear or you have lost one part of even liver or any other organ. That organ can be regenerated through your stem cells, and it can be put into your body. So we are developing stem cell therapy into heart also, where heart has lost its functions, we can regain its functions. Now again, the biomaterials of that kind, which can be developed in the laboratories. Neural engineering has come, wherein they have developed neural systems, artificial neural systems, wherein they can do things just like a human being. So that is also there. Biomechanics are there. So they can put, like suppose the hand, you have lost a hand, they will put a artificial hand which will regulate according to your needs. So that is also there. Telehealth. So now telemedicine has been developed by the government, but it has not been promoted to an extent where everyone is benefited. Biosignal processing. Just now you saw the practicality of the biosignal processing on the monitor, how your heart pressure, heart rate, your saturation, respiratory rate, everything has been devised into and put it on to the monitor, and you assess it, understand it. Now we see it, we understand it. We have alarm systems with the in individual practice, but intervention is still lacking. So there are now devices. Say suppose your heart has stopped beating, so it should start automatically. It should start give beats to your heart. So such devices have also come. So there is something called AICD, which is implanted onto your chest, wherein if your heart is not beating, it will make it beat. So such devices are also there. So that have also come. Now coming to medical imaging, it has improved a lot. You see MRIs, CT scans, and beyond that you have PEC, PETs and all that in the malignancies and all. Computational modeling. Okay. So all these things are there in biomedicals. Coming to robotics. So the robotics, you have different areas of robotics, like surgical robots are there, exoskeletons are there, care robots. They're very famous now, care robots in all care centers, especially in Western population, in UK and US, where the old age homes are there. They keep care robots. So they do take care of everything. Hospital robots. Hospital robots are universal robots who deliver the medicines, who dispense the certain domestic things, food, and contactless delivery of the drugs, and they even clean the hospitals. They sense any problems, leaks in the oxygens, leaks in the nitrogen and all that, they fix it. So such hospital robots are also available. Nanobots have come now, wherein it is like a capsule endoscope. A capsule is put in your body, and that capsule goes and searches for the disease and comes out. So such nanobots are also there. Then there are delivery systems in nanobots, wherein they deliver the particular drug to a particular tissue at a particular rate. So nanobots are there, pharmabots are there, like insulin delivery systems are there. Like a person who is having a sugar fluctuating sugars will have an insulin delivery system, wherein insulin will be delivered at required intervals at required dose. You don't have to worry about the sugars. Oh, now I need a more dose and I need a less dose. So you don't have to worry about that. So those are also in existence, and they are being developed for future use also. So I think I have been talking all this. This is the Da Vinci, very popular Da Vinci Z system. This is a arm, robotic arm. Here the surgeon is sitting on the console, and the nursing staff, the first assistant, is trying to put in the gadgets here, and he is trying to operate on a patient. So this is how it is done, and it is in existence. And there are many centers who are using these robots, but in India, very few centers because of affordability concerns. So what is the role of AI, IoT, and ML in machine learning in our healthcare? It is for the disease identification and diagnosis. It is for medical imaging. It is for drug discovery and manufacturing. It is for personalized medical treatment, smart health records, and also for the prediction of the diseases. So for all this, it is aided. So this IoT AI has developed into virtual hospitals and wards, wherein you doctor or the staff need not go into the hospitals. They just have to set in protocols, and that will be done there and there itself. And there are wearable biosensors, like you have Apple watches and Fitbits and all that. So they have the biosensors, wherein they track your health records, and they also share the data to the particular healthcare personnel also. There are connected inhalers likewise, like smartwatch monitoring and automated insulin delivery systems, which have helped. So this is how technology is developing, and it is in the very beginning stage. It is yet to make a lot of leap into our branch. So I believe I have covered most of the things, and I can always ask questions. So the greatest gift you can give to your family and the world is a healthy you. So the priority is you, but priority should not end with you. You should always have to prioritize the whole country as such. So for a healthy heart, we have to make a good road for everyone, which will be utilized by everyone. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sadashiv. It was a very exhaustive presentation. And I have a few questions from the people here, attendees. First one is by Vinay Kaul. He's asking, is CVD genetically predisposed, or is there a larger contribution of our lifestyle?
Yes, yeah, we are predisposed. As Asians, as I said, we are predisposed to certain cardiovascular diseases. There are certain congenital heart diseases. Congenital in the sense, the child's born with a heart disease, they remain with the heart disease, and sometimes they are treatable or non-treatable also. So certain heart diseases are there, like you come across some hole in the heart, or the hole has not closed. So some milder form of diseases are also there. There are severe forms also. So you can be genetically predisposed, and your contribution by your lifestyle could be additive, or it may not be. So it is not always, you cannot say that, okay, I am predisposed to heart disease, I am following a good lifestyle, so I'll never have it. It is not like that. So what we suggest is, when you have a positive life, certain heart diseases, not all, certain heart diseases, we advise in particular to go for certain tests at certain intervals. Say there are some other diseases like ischemic heart disease, we don't advise you regular checkups and all that. Only when we see that there is a risk factor involved, we advise you. Otherwise, not required.
Okay. We have another question from Rishabh Khandelwal. I think you have answered this one, but still I will repeat that question. Is it common to have a heart palpitations in 20s and 30s? Something to worry about?
I can't get your question. Come again.
Is it common to have heart palpitations?
Palpitation.
Palpitations in
Palpitations
20s
is,
and 30s?
yeah, palpitations. See, the commonest palpitation what you get is jitters, whatever you call. So what the anxiety you have. What happens is you have palpitations. You have never done something, or you are facing an interview. You have a palpitations, right? But that is not pathological. That is not pathological. Pathological in the sense it is not a disease. It is not a disease. You may have, when you are anxious, your BP will be high. Yes, it is not a disease. That is why what we recommend you is, in normal circumstances, when you have palpitations, or if it is disturbing your routine work, say you are sitting around, you have palpitations, you are sleeping, you get palpitations and you're awake. So that is what is pathological. So having palpitation doesn't mean that you have a disease. Not always.
Okay, great. So one more question from Vinay Kaul. Assuming that a child is born with a healthy heart, what specific actions in our lifestyles are the root cause of creating an unhealthy heart?
It is our, you see, the basic problem is we have changed a lot. For what reason, I don't know. We have changed a lot. We have changed because we have peer pressure. We do a lot of things just because our peers do it. We never do it just because we need it. So do it what you need it, rather than doing what others need it. So the best part is, see, I have stayed in metros also, like in Delhi and Bangalore. The food culture is totally different. So you say, okay, what happens if I eat in a weekend, just with friends, once a while on my birthday? What if why your birthday cannot be celebrated without a cake? Like, why can't you skip a cake? Why can't you make a difference?
Yeah.
So let us make a difference. Come back to our basics. So as an Indian, let us come back to our basics. Why we need Coke? Why need without Coke we can't have a party. Without beverages we don't have a party. So why we have changed a lot? We have changed a lot. Just look at it. We have walked through a lot of changes. So those changes are definitely making a difference to us. They're definitely making a health impact. So let us have a change. So we are going behind organic. So is it organic? What is organic? People have lost. Organic was what we have got. We born in 80s. You know what organic was. Those who were born before 80s and 70s, we used to drink water anywhere. Suppose I used to go by train. I used to drink water from a tap. We never had bottles. Now, without bottles, you can't survive. For water, we are depending on Bisleri. Anything, even we go to hotels, we ask for a bottle. And is it good to consume such water? No, it's not. It is a disproportionate constituent of minerals. It's disproportionate. It is not natural constituent. A river water doesn't constitute the same bottled water. You cannot compare with that. And giving boiled water, like mineral water, then you are boiling it, then you are giving it to your child. Is it a good habit? No, absolutely no.
Okay. So next question is from Rudra, and he is asking, what are the typical medical tests that one need to do on a regular basis to know the condition of the heart or the body in general, and what should be the frequency of such tests? Recommendations, please.
Yeah. Now you think you have a heart disease. Okay. One fine day you just walk. You go to some place where you can walk briskly for 45 minutes. You walk briskly, super fast, or you climb a flight of stairs in just 10 or 15 seconds. If you're able to do so without much of problems, your heart is good. That test is enough. Beyond that, you don't need any test.
Okay, I think you addressed most of the questions that registration people have asked, and thank you very much, Sadashiv. Bidyut, Smita.
Yeah, hi Santosh.
Yeah. Sadashiv has completed his presentation.
Okay.
So
yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Santosh, and thank you, Doctor, for such a wonderful and informative session. I think it was really helpful to all of us We had a lot of questions, I think, even by the chat box or even before the event started, I think people started putting in their questions via the registration link. So thank you so much for the session. And I hope we can follow all these suggestions on our way to a healthy heart. Thank you so much to Santosh as well. So Santosh and Smita, Smita, our chapter president, along with Santosh, who is our immediate past president. So both of them came up with the idea for this event, and I would like to thank them for coordinating with everyone for making this event a success. It leads a lot of efforts to coordinate with teams for registrations, publicity. So thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Regis, who was a critical in publicizing the events and for the registrations, and also people from our IITB Alumni Association Central Office. Gaurav, who plays a key role in sending the mails across to all the alumnus so that we can reach out to them. And last but not the least, our CEO, Devesh, who joined us and he graced the occasion with by delivering the welcome address. So
and also the Atenu.
the key participants, the key people which makes the event success. I think the participants, I think we had 27 participants at the peak. So very good and interactive session. I think people started putting in their questions as well. So with this, I would like to hand it over to Santosh. Back to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vidyut, and thank you, IITB Alumni Association. And above all, thank you, Atenu, for giving us a platform to have this Zoom call with the doctor. I hope it was useful to everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Sadashiv. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And this particular discussions will be hosted on YouTube after maybe 2-3 days, and it is available for anybody else who has missed this event. Thank you so much, and we will close the call. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.